Que bom que você está aqui conosco. Eu tenho certeza que você vai gostar do episódio de hoje. Tivemos a oportunidade de falar com o pastor Greg Surratt, o pastor da Seacoast Church, a maior igreja evangélica do estado da Carolina do Sul. Nós falamos sobre fé, falamos sobre empreendedorismo, falamos sobre o sucesso e falamos também sobre os desafios da vida do pastor e do empreendedor. Eu aprendi muito com isso e tenho certeza que você também vai aprender. Welcome to LatinCast, your Brazilian community online. We're so glad that you're joining us. As you know, we would love for you to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, the LatinCast, and on Instagram, LatinCast. Today I have a very special person, a very special friend. He has inspired me in so many ways, and I wanted to welcome firsthand to LatinCast, Pastor Greg Surratt. Thank you for being here.
Lacey, great to be here. Love what you're doing. Excited to be here.
Well, I'm personally very much excited because you have inspired me over the years in so many different ways. Just our relationship, our friendship, and I'm really glad that you said yes to the invitation, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Well, as long as it's not in Portuguese.
Well, I can't promise that.
Okay.
I can promise that.
Okay.
Well, I know you and I, we've been to Brazil together.
Yeah, yes.
Tell us a little bit how that experience.
Oh, that was incredible. As a part of what we do, we work to help plant churches, and there are great churches and great relationships in Brazil. But as long as new people are being born, we need more churches.
Come on.
And so you agreed to go to Brazil with me, or maybe I went with you.
Yeah.
You were
we were there together.
You were the director, and it was incredible, absolutely incredible. Great relationships. Absolutely beautiful country. I hadn't been before. But
That's right. We had a great time.
We did.
Honestly, we had a great time.
And we ate some good food.
Very good food. We got some extra pounds also.
We did. I've still got some of them.
Well, let me ask you this. So the Brazilian community, we've created this space where we're trying to empower, encourage, and bring information to the Brazilian community. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is really bring along my friends that I know and they have a lot of value. And obviously you are one of them. So, but the community might not know you yet. So tell us, who is Greg Surratt?
Well, I'm married to Debbie Surratt. I have 4 children and 14 grandchildren, and have lived here in Charleston for about 37 years, I think, maybe a little bit more than that by now. Grew up in Denver, Colorado, and moved out here about 37 years ago and started Seacoast Church about 36 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And what brought you to Charleston specifically?
Well, that's interesting. My cousin was married to the pastor of, at the time, Northwood Assembly in North Charleston, and he and I have been talking about working together for a while. I was pastoring a church in a rural community, and they asked me to come and be on staff, and I said, no, I don't want to go back south or east. I hadn't really been out here that much. I'm a Western guy, but I began to pray about it, came out and visited, and just something stuck in my heart. So this is the right thing to do. So we came and we were on staff with them for about a year, and they had a vision of starting new churches. And so they said, would you consider planting a church for us in the Mount Pleasant area? And so we did, and that's how we got started.
Really? So that was it was not part of the plan. I mean, it happened as you were here.
Yeah, I think they had a big plan to ultimately do something, but it was interesting. Probably 3 months in, after a Sunday service, the pastor asked me to meet him at a restaurant that night, and it didn't sound like it was going to be good.
Oh boy!
And he said to me, we went over some things, and he said, this is not working. I said, it's working great. I love it. I love this. He said, no. He said, there is a dream in your heart, and there's a church in your heart, and I know there is. And he said, we have a vision to plant churches, and I think it's time for you to start thinking about that. And so he saw in me more than I saw in myself.
Wow.
In fact, I think that's part of what a leader does, is calls out in people. They don't just look at people, they see through people and how God can use them. And I was, when we were in Illinois, finances were hard. We didn't get paychecks a lot of time. And I thought, we're getting a steady paycheck here. This is okay. This is going well, but it's about more than a steady paycheck. And he saw more in me than I saw in myself at that particular time.
That's amazing. On the early days of Seacoast, what really kind of sparked your vision and the challenges that came along with it? Could you share a little bit of that?
Sure. And I thank God for my upbringing. I was raised in small Pentecostal churches, and grateful to God for it. But in one of the churches I was a part of, I was working at a computer company at the time, Hewlett Packard, and one of my coworkers went through a difficult time, and I began to talk with them and share with them and pray with them, and they said, we'd like to come to your church. And I thought, oh no, they don't want to do that. They won't, they won't understand anything, because our church was not geared toward bringing your friends. We talked about winning the world, but we had a whole different language, and that's not even talking about a Pentecostal language. It's just how we spoke to one another, talked about church, all this kind of thing. And we were just not a place where you would bring a friend. And so as I was thinking through that, we moved out here, I thought, you know what? I would like to create a church where I could bring a friend. You can bring a friend to any church, but that we really thought about that. I call it gospel hospitality. It's just we're aware of, if you invited somebody into your home, you don't just keep doing the things that you normally do and ignore them.
Right.
You bring them into what you're doing, and so that's what we thought about, and that's kind of that was the impetus for Seacoast. Is let's see if we can. There are a lot of great churches. Let's don't just try to get other Christians out of great churches to come to ours. How about if we created a church that really, really was a place where people who didn't go yet could come and feel somewhat comfortable. You're never going to feel totally comfortable.
Yeah,
Holy Spirit does whatever He does. But that people thought about you coming before you even came in the door.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember I heard you share this story before, that on the very first days of Seacoast, you actually did a survey of 10,000 people, if I'm not mistaken.
16,000.
16,000. So where did that come from, and what was the result? What were you trying to achieve through that?
What we were trying to do really is, in the business world, you'd call it marketing. We were trying to get the word out that we were starting a church, but how do you do that, especially when your vision is, let's get some people who don't normally come to church? And so we thought about that a little bit, and that was back in the days where there were a lot of the people who are watching this, they don't realize that telephones used to be plugged into the wall, and
right.
They had a great big phone book that had everybody's number in it, and they had white pages, which were individuals, and yellow pages, which were businesses. And so we took a phone book and took all of Mount Pleasant and Isle of Palms and Sullivan's Island, and we just called all the white pages in there.
Wow.
And we decided to do a survey to find out what people thought. And so we would say, when they answered the phone right during dinner time, because that's when you knew everybody would be there, because back then you had a meal together, at dinner time. And So we called and we would say, do you attend church? And they would say, yes. We would say, great, keep going, eat your dinner, everything's good. And if they said no, then we would say, would you mind if I ask you a couple of questions about that? And so we would ask them, why do you think people don't attend church? And then we wrote down those things. And then we said, we're starting a new church, and if we were to address some of those issues, would you be interested in hearing more? And what was interesting is that the issues had very little to do with theology. They couldn't even spell theology. No. These are people that aren't normally going to church.
Right.
I mean, they had been, a lot of them, had been to church and didn't go anymore, whatever reason. Some people, had never gone. And so their issues, were more to do with, that didn't relate to the music. Is there anything for my kids?
Yeah.
Hypocrites, they'd known a Christian or seen things in newspapers that made them uncomfortable and those types of things. Well, it had nothing to do with the gospel and theology and all that. It had everything to do with sociology, how we are as people.
That is
And
interesting.
so we said, well, you know what? Let's see if we can attack some of that. And that's kind of how we started.
That's amazing. Just to see the progression of not even thinking about those things. And I take so many business lessons from that.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. I mean, the marketing part of it, how you were kind of researching ahead of your time, really, what people really thought about church and why they didn't come to church. And when I look at Seacoast today, you can see the hospitality, it's second to none. Everybody that comes to Seacoast, if you ask them, what do you like about the church? They will say, first thing,
Brandon,
well, that too. But how they've been, welcomed.
yes. Mm-hmm.
The smiles,
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's so non-threatening. And that starts a lot with you also.
Mm-hmm.
You've set that tone in such an amazing way
Thank you.
that's a trademark.
Mm-hmm.
And I can attest to that because as I am traveling or talking to folks on the foyer, this church is so amazing. So now making a shift. So a little also, you have started the Association of Related Churches. You co-founded that.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit of that. How did you get into that? What started all that? What was your thought coming into it?
Yeah. It was about, we started the church in 1988, so about 11 or 12 years later, we'd grown and people were asking, are there other churches like this in other towns, community? And there probably were. But that was one thing. And then I had begun to develop some relationships with a few pastors, and they felt disconnected, and so I got up I think it was a first Wednesday or maybe it was a weekend, I don't know, and I preached a vision message for the coming new year and about the things that I felt like God was calling us to do and look at. And, you get inspired sometimes and you say things that you weren't planning on saying, And I said, and one of the things we want to do is plant 2,000 churches. How many of you believe that there ought to be a life-giving church like this in every community in America? I thought about America first. So I would like to see 2,000 churches in my lifetime. After I got done preaching, I thought, what are you thinking? I mean, I had prayed about it, but I wasn't ready to share anything. And what was interesting, here's a leadership principle is, so I shared that, and a man came up to me, and he was had recently retired from one of the Fortune 500 companies. It was actually probably Fortune 100 companies. Moved down here, and I hadn't really met him that much, and I don't know if I've met him at all. And he came up to me and he said, that's a vision big enough for me to get involved in.
Wow.
And he said, I want to help. And then along came a man named Billy Hornsby who had a lot of success in building businesses and ministries. And he asked what was the dream in my heart. I said, let's plant 2,000 churches. And he said, how are you doing so far? I said, well, we're 0 for 3. We planted 3 and we've had to close all of them down. And sometimes even a God-inspired idea, it doesn't work every time. That's right. And he said, you've got the dream and the vision and you've got the model. He said, I know how to put together businesses. And so him and this other guy and some folks got involved, and they knew more about businesses and organizations and all of that. And I didn't know anything about it. All I knew is I wanted to plant churches. And so we started. And I had a meeting yesterday online with this season's church planters, which would be coming up on the fall season coming up. And we have planted 1,110 churches, I think.
That's amazing.
So we're not to 2,000 yet, but we're going to get there.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
We're working towards that. So let's keep moving.
Let's keep going.
The ball down the road. Wow, that's amazing. Just to see what amazes me is how God brings together the people to accomplish the vision. I mean, you just spoke out what God put in your heart, and all of a sudden, pieces starts moving in,
right?
And things adjust, and this is amazing. I remember that as part of that vision, we get excited, and unfortunately, we don't do it as often now to announce at church. That church is coming up, but it is super exciting to see that number getting smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
The numbers,
the
distance.
delta.
Yeah. I mean, the numbers definitely of churches getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But the remainder.
Mm-hmm.
But tell us a little bit more. Now you have started Seacoast, and that's been going for 36 years.
Mm-hmm.
You actually made a shift. Your son is now leading the church.
Yeah.
You helped co-found ARC, and you also have started Pastors Collective.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about Pastors Collective.
Well, during COVID, a pastor that was on our staff that was a very close friend of mine committed suicide. And COVID was hard for everybody. For pastors, it was very hard. You had, there was the isolation. We're not built for isolation. And everybody's isolated. We had to close churches down for a season. And then when you did open them, then you had kind of the political craziness of those times. And, if you said we have to wear masks for a little while, and some people didn't want to wear masks. And then if you said we're not going to wear masks, there were people that did want to wear masks. You couldn't win. And people left churches all over America. This was going on, probably all over the world, but our particular part that I know about is here. And so my friend committed suicide. It was devastating. And I heard so much going on from pastors and feedback about how discouraged they were. And then people started to do surveys, professional survey companies, and one of them said that 42% of pastors were burned out to the point that they would quit if they could. If they could get another job tomorrow, they would walk away. And I thought, how devastating that would be. I mean, can you imagine if nearly half the churches, and oh, by the way, as the younger the demographic was, the younger the pastor, the higher the number. Under 40 was about 49%, 48, 49%. And I thought, what if half the pastors in America just quit? How would that impact churches? How would it impact families? How would it impact communities? And so I said, I'm going to attack this, with as much energy as I possibly can. And so we formed Pastors Collective, which had actually already formed, but we didn't really know what it was. And we created a retreat center. God provided amazing facilities for that here in Charleston. And we decided what we're going to do is we're going to help leaders of all kinds, especially pastors, to live well and finish strong. There's a lot of material out there on how you can build great churches. It's great. There wasn't when we started Seacoast, but there's a lot of great things out there right now. How to build well. But what I know is, in order to build well, you need for the long haul, you need to be well. Let's be well before we build well, and let's live well so we can finish strong. And so we created a retreat center called the Retreat at Church Creek, where we have served since 2021, I think is when we did it, 2021. We've served over 2,000 leaders, and 51% say it was a life-changing experience. And now we're creating an aftercare program, and we're just excited about the potential and the possibilities. But that's what I want to devote my life to.
That's amazing. There are so many ways that I can ask questions and just try to pick your brain on the trajectory of each step that you've taken throughout your life. But if there is a common denominator, what do you think has really made a difference for you to step out into what God's calling you to do and really devote to it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I've been asked that one. I've been asked a lot of questions, in environments like this. I think part of it is just getting comfortable with how God has wired me up. I'm not wired up like Lacey.
Yeah.
I wish I was in some ways. I've watched you, and there are some gifts that you have that, I wished I had, but I don't have. I have the gifts that God has given me. And I believe that God gives you gifts in embryo form. Mm-hmm. And then we are just faithful with those gifts. And we learn to do good with those gifts. One of my favorite scriptures, my life verse, Galatians 6:9, says, "Don't be weary in doing good, for in due season you will reap a harvest if you don't give up."
That's right.
And God says, I'll do this. I'll bring the harvest. And that's his responsibility, the timing, the size, all of that. And my responsibility is to learn to do good and make good repeatable, which are systems, and then not quit. And so I guess I just haven't quit. And I've just with little steps along the way, I've seen that if you follow God, listen to God, partner with God on his agenda, and just really believe that, God brings the right people. You got to have a team. John Maxwell says, teamwork makes the dream work.
That's right.
And I really believe that. And sometimes you feel like you don't have a team, but if you get God on where you want to go, oftentimes, I would say almost all the time, in my life it's been all the time, he brings the right people along. You're one of those. A dream for, Latin America. And here comes this amazing leader. I go, wow, God, that's happened so many times.
Yeah.
And so it's just get a vision and step out and declare the vision and then watch the team develop.
Do you think those principles or what you just said and shared would work in a business setting?
Absolutely. Some people have said about me that I'm a spiritual entrepreneur.
That's true. I cannot.
Serial entrepreneur. It's got to be, let's do this and then let's do this next, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
And many of the principles, I think every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father above.
Right.
And they all don't land in the church. Some of those gifts land outside the church. They land in the marketplace. And So I think there are some principles that work in the church, outside of the church, wherever you are called to be.
Well, I want to make this more specific.
Mm-hmm.
If we could drive that message to a very specific immigrant community,
Yeah.
whether Brazilians or Hispanics or any part of the world that they're moving to the States because they're looking for a better life.
Yeah.
How do those principles that you just shared of building a dream, building a company, building a business, whether intentional or not, how would that apply?
Yeah, one of the things that you do is you find, I like to say it like this, what is a burden to you is a blessing to someone else, okay? So that's how you build a team. But you find somebody's burden that you can somehow be a blessing to. You can be an answer to. Right now, I have a yard that looks like a jungle, okay? And our home is on a couple of acres outside of town, which I thought, man, I really would like that. And now that I got it, it's like a constant battle with nature, okay? So I look out there and I see a constant battle with nature. It's just frustrating and overwhelming to me. Well, if I was somebody looking to create a business, I would think about people like me and those things and say, you know what? I can be a blessing to that. I can answer, I can solve a problem that you have. And I can have an answer to your problem. And I can create, some things that will benefit me financially and help you in whatever way that you need to. So I would be willing to pay somebody to help me do what I'm doing, but you have to see it as an opportunity. And what I see is in the Hispanic community here in our city, and the immigrant community in our city there are some amazing people that are creating amazing businesses and opportunities. Always start small.
That's right.
And never despise small beginnings. But I believe if you'll work hard, I'm grateful to be an American because there are opportunities. There are great countries all over the place. But there are opportunities, and I think that America rewards opportunities.
It does.
And so find a sore spot that people are, man, it's a frustration to me or it's a burden to me, and you come up with a solution. I believe that you seek God first in all things, but you work hard and you come up with a solution, create a plan, get people involved in your plan, and I think we're in a country that rewards that.
That's interesting because that seems like it comes back around to you. That seems like how you started Seacoast, how you co-founded ARC, how you saw a need for the pastors and starts Pastors Collective. So,
well, if you start a business that nobody needs, you're not going to go very far.
That's right.
But there are needs everywhere. Find a need and fill it.
Well, let me put it this way. There is one moment that I recall. We were at Church Creek.
Mm-hmm.
We were with some Brazilian pastors, and you were hosting that table that night. And you shared a message. That was the first time that I actually heard you sharing it. And I've heard you sharing that at the church that talks about purpose. That talks about its
identity,
purpose,
and assignment.
Yeah. Would you mind sharing that a little bit in a nutshell? I think that's such a critical message for our audience to hear.
Absolutely. And it comes from Genesis chapter 1 and verse 26. It's the beginning of everything. That's a good place to go, is Genesis.
Okay.
Beginning of everything. And God says, let's create man in our image. And then they're going to rule over creation. That's the nutshell of it. And so from that, I get that all of us need to understand who we are. In fact, there's 3 questions I think that everybody needs to answer.
Okay.
And the first one is, who am I? Okay? And the answer to that is, I am created in the image of God. There are all kinds of things in our world that will tell you what you aren't, what you can't do, what you can't be. God doesn't do that. God says, you are created. We are going to create them in our image, which, think about that. Think about the limitless possibilities there are when you take the limits off and say, no, I'm a child of God. I'm loved by God, created by God. In fact, I have a little thing that I say every day, that this is going to be a great day, because I have a God who loves me and who has a wonderful plan for my life. Now, every day isn't peaches and cream, but every day has great potential because I'm created in the image of God. And that's the first question is, who are you? Well, I am created in the image of God. I'm loved by God. And then the second thing is, what am I here for? What's my purpose? Why am I here? And people worry about that all their lives. Why am I here? You know, it could even be in the community that you're serving that are new to Charleston, and sometimes you get here and it's hard, and you wonder, why aren't I back in Brazil?
Yeah.
Or why aren't I in Mexico, or wherever I came here from? And so have I missed my purpose? Well, what I would say is, your purpose and my purpose is the same as Adam and Eve. Their purpose was to rule. God said, you're created in my image, I want you to rule. And what we're created for is to bring the kingdom rule of God into every assignment, into every circumstance, into every environment that we come into. Well, what is the kingdom rule? For them, it was to create order out of chaos, right? And for us, the kingdom rule of God, Jesus said to his disciples, he said, it's not going to look like you see in the world, where they lord it over them, and that's how a lot of what I call bad leadership is. You can intimidate people, you can lord over people, and you can get results for a little while. And then you're going to have to get some new people, because people won't hang around. And Jesus said, no, it's not like that. You serve people. You become the least. You serve. And so we're to bring the kingdom rule of God, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, long-suffering, all of those things into every circumstance I come into. I like to say it like this, that I'm called to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer walks into a room, and if the room's too cold, it just reflects the room. A thermostat actually sets the temperature.
That's right.
And you and I, and anybody who's watching, we are called to set the temperature of every room we walk into. When you walk into a Starbucks, when you walk into the job site, when you walk into wherever it is, people go, there's something different there. Because they set they bring peace where there's chaos.
Wow.
They bring confidence where there's a lack of confidence.
Wow.
They bring the kingdom rule of God into every environment.
Wow.
So then the third one is assignment.
I think that's my favorite.
Yeah. Well, assignment is what you do.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I break them up into micro assignments and macro assignments. Micro assignments are that time you walk into Starbucks or the restaurant, wherever, and you're in there. And have you ever been in a hurry and the people in there weren't in a hurry? You start to get worked up. I was like that the other day.
Yeah.
And God had to remind me, I'm not really here for coffee. I'm going to get coffee, but I'm here to bring the kingdom rule of God into this environment. I'm to be a thermostat in this environment. And so everywhere you go, you can be that. And then your long-term assignments are the work that you do. Or you're a father, you're a grandfather, you're a pastor, leader, whatever. And those are our assignments. And here's where it gets crazy. Well, I can just say this. I've done a lot of things in my life. We talked about the highlights. I've washed cars for a living. I put together computers for a living. I pastored in a very small rural community for a living. I've led this wonderful church in Charleston, ARC and Pastors Collective. There's just a lot of things I've done, but none of them were my identity, and that's where it gets messed up. And in every one of them, I could fulfill my purpose. Every one of them, I could fulfill my purpose. I don't have to change zip codes to fulfill my purpose. The problem is people move from one job to another, and that's okay sometimes, or one zip code to another because they want to find their purpose. And the problem is you have to take you with you, and you got the same you here as you had over here. If your purpose, and you're real clear about it, is to bring the kingdom rule of God into every assignment, then you can do that anywhere. And by the way, God gives the assignments.
When you're talking about that and just having that clear vision and understanding of who you are, I'm thinking, well, that makes sense because it makes it easier for you to say, hey, my time here has ended. And when I'm saying that, I'm thinking when you shifted over from leading Seacoast now to being a founder of Seacoast, you could have said, okay, hey, my time has really ended, and I don't have a grief, or I don't need to be holding on to that as my identity.
Holding on and feeling like, for instance, last Easter, thousands of people in church. It's amazing. Easter's amazing. And I founded this church, and I sit on the front row in this church. You see me there. And last Easter, I didn't pray. I'd get up in front and pray. I didn't get up front and preach. I didn't get up front and do anything. My assignment was like a Walmart greeter. I was in the foyer, the old guy that makes people comfortable to be there. And so somebody came to me and said, what is it like? You used to be the man, and you're not the man anymore. And I responded, I'm still the man. I haven't changed. That's not my assignment. And it's not my identity either. And so I like my new assignment. I like my assignment for today, which is to serve. Let me give you a couple of words that help on that. And there's three. Two of them I've really worked out. One of them, I don't have the phrasing on it yet. I just was thinking about it yesterday. But don't ever forget what your identity is. Protect your identity. Be careful. Be careful with your identity. The second one is be faithful in your purpose. Wherever you are, you be faithful to bring the kingdom rule of God. And the third word is this: you be grateful for your assignment. It might not be the assignment that you think is the best in the world. Work as if you're working unto the Lord.
That's right.
He knows your address. Wow. Be grateful for your assignment. You do well, who knows what he does with you.
That is amazing. I love this conversation, and we could go on and on and on and on because it's so exciting to see and have kind of seen it from close by, all these transitions in your life. It's like you're not just preaching the word, you actually lived it.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to do that, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that excites me because I'm sure many of the people that follow us, they struggle with their identity on things that they have built, especially being an immigrant. And again, I'm bringing that back on because that's the main people that listen to us. When they come here, they build a business, and that becomes who they are.
Yep.
This is who I am. I am this person, or I am this company. And knowing how and when to shift it over, or hand it off, or sell it, or do whatever the case may be, their identity goes with it.
Well, that's because that's not who they are. Even when we go to a party or we meet somebody new and they say, and who are you? Well, I am, whatever, I have this company. And the company, be proud of it. But that's your assignment right now. Your identity never changes. You are and what's important about that is there are times when your company goes up and to the right. And there are times that your company is plateaued. And there are times that your company is just barely making it. And it doesn't change your identity.
That's right.
Doesn't change your identity. You're a chosen, beloved child of God. And I would say, work real hard on learning to do good. What are the systems that make your company better? Systems are just the vehicle to get to where you want to go. And what are the systems? And we'll work on those, and then trust God for the results.
Pastor Greg, looking back at your life and all the things that you have done, what would you say were the most significant in the sense of that actually they brought change to the community, to Charleston?
Sometimes it comes through hardships. I remember when our church was growing and we had one location, and our town said no in building a new building, and we were, what are we going to do now? How do we handle this? And it seemed terrible. And here's what I like to say about that, is that God is omniscient, which means he knows everything. And it's real hard to surprise an omniscient God, right? He never says, oh, my bad, I didn't see that coming.
That's right.
So when you're surprised by something that happens in your business or, happens with your kids or in your family, know this, God isn't surprised. And if God isn't surprised, then he's at work on a solution before you even knew there was a problem. And so the quicker we can get on the solution side and just trust God with that. And I remember there's been several of those when that time when the city said no here, and we were like, what are we going to do? And out of that came this idea of multi-site. Because the rules were, now Brazil's been ahead of us because they've been doing this for a while, but the rules in America were you had a church in one location, and that was how you did it. And we had to think outside the box and say, well, they won't let us expand this location, so we're going to have to go to more locations. And I would say that's been a blessing not only to Charleston and to our state, but to the world of having to do that. One of those locations, I was reading the paper one day, back when they had a newspaper. You remember those? And it was USA Today, and they listed the top 10 most dangerous cities in America. And number 7 was North Charleston, South Carolina, which is right over the bridge from where our church is. I was driving over the bridge one day, and I felt like the Lord said to me, so what are you going to do about that? And I thought, well, nothing. I live over here. Our church is over here. That's not really our responsibility. And I believe God really deepened our love for the entire city, not just our little city. And so we worked together with the government there and other churches, and we created the Dream Center, which I think has been a major blessing. We serve thousands of patients every year medically. We've given away hundreds of thousands of pounds of food over the years, and created a congregation where people's lives are being changed. And it all came out of a difficult situation. You've got a situation where town says no, or you've got a situation where the surveys say, boy, things are bad here. We're one of the solutions that God said we want to help through mentoring kids in school and all those types of things.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And not just North Charleston, but West Ashley and so many other locations that Seacoast has established itself, and it just really brought a different perspective to those communities.
Well, we want to be the kind of church that doesn't take from the community but gives to the community. We also want to be the kind of church that if we were taken away from the community, they'd miss us. Yeah. And so we're trying.
Well, and I can attest to that because you personally are one of the most generous persons that I've ever met in my life. And that has been such a way that Seacoast has been managed. And we can see that in Pastor Josh and just the whole staff, that Seacoast really, it's a open-handed church, which makes the whole difference when it comes to communities, when it comes to interactions with anybody. But I want to pick your brain on a little bit more specific. Building a team. I mean, you haven't gotten here by yourself, like you said. There is an amazing team of leaders, people around you. Give us a couple of principles that you've applied, that you've learned on building that team, whether it's that construction company that is struggling to get the team right, or that house cleaning crew that just doesn't seem to fit, or that store that's opening, or the restaurant. Just overall, what principle could you share with us?
Yeah. I would say first thing is dedicate your business to the Lord, and let Him be your co-partner, and that helps. I think that you need a vision. Where there is no vision, the Bible says the people perish. And so as a business leader, what is your vision? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? Specifically, I'd write that down. I remember in 1993, I went to the beach here and asked God, what is a vision? What can we do? And I felt like the Lord dropped into my heart that we wanted to reach 2,000 people by the year 2000. It was 7 years away. And so what I did was I took that number 2,000 and I went home and I put it on a spreadsheet. And then I put every year, where we are right now, and we were at like 325 people, 2,000, what do we need to do to get from here to there? How many every year? If it was a business, I would say, what do I want to do this year? What kind of revenue do I want? How many widgets do I need to make? Whatever it is, and then get very, very clear on the vision of where we want to go, and then exactly what do we want to accomplish and what do we want to do. Like at Seacoast, so part of it is we know that people are going to come. We've got to have a plan for how are people going to know about our church. When they come to our church, how are they going to get assimilated into our church? And then when they get assimilated into our church, how do we prepare them for, what God has for them? And so there's tons of steps. I mean, how do you deal with kids and all that?
Yeah.
Written down, all of it. This is what we think. This is what we think will happen. Now we need to get the right people. First, you get the right vision. Write it down. Get the right people. I believe that in a God-given vision, that the people are there. They may already be in your business. They may be in the harvest, we call it, in the community. But there are going to be people there. And so I want to look at what do I want? Now, these days, we're real clear about writing job descriptions for exactly what kind of person do we want for this job. I can tell you about me. If you want me to do the same thing every day over and over and over again and do it well, don't hire me. Hire my wife. Hire some people that I know, because that's not me. It's going to be a disaster. And if that's not in your job description and you just like me, or I'm your friend, that may not work. But I can tell you what I can do. I have gifts, but I don't have those gifts. And so you write down exactly what kind of person do we need. There are a lot of great books on this subject. What do they call it? The 6 Working Geniuses, which has been an amazing book for me in creating the retreat at Church Creek, of how you look for the right gifts in people, how you make the gifts work together, what you can do to really motivate people. But get a good vision, write it down, be very specific, get the right people, have the right meetings. There's information out there on YouTube and books and all that about how to have the right kind of meetings and then measure the results. And then we just get better and better and better and better. And so.
I remember to that comment, I remember Pastor Chris Hodges, he mentioned about numbers, that, numbers tell a lot, and he likes to keep track of numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Because it tells, our numbers are the ones that actually tells a lot about your health, right? You can tell about your health
You gotta
looking at
measure
numbers,
it. Yeah.
measuring it.
And a lot of times in business or in churches, we aren't measuring anything.
That's right.
And so we don't know whether we're doing a good job or not, or the people around us are doing a good job. I think it's real clear, real important that if you have more than one, here's a principle. If you have more than one person in your business, you're going to have communication problems. Okay? More than one, you're going to have communication problems. But I think that you need to be very clear on what a good job looks like. Okay? And then let's measure that. And then if we don't live up to the measurements, maybe we need to adjust them, or maybe there are some things in our work habits that we need to adjust. It could be any of them. But a lot of times we just get mad because something isn't getting done right.
Yeah.
And we don't, numbers will tell you what's good, what's bad, where health is, where it's not. And keep good statistics.
So what's next? Out of everything that we talked about and all these amazing things that has happened throughout your life, career, ministry, what's next for Pastor Greg?
I'm going to keep doing the last thing that God called me to do until he tells me something else. But part of that is being a mentor and a champion for next generation leaders. That's what I want to do. And help leaders live well and finish strong.
Come on.
Be well so that you can build well. And I think that's important. Yeah.
Well, I cannot finish the time that we have this conversation without asking a question.
Sure.
That most Brazilians that come to our church ask. When are we having a Seacoast Brazil, or a Brazilian Seacoast service, or anything like that?
The answer to that is this guy right here. I've been pushing. I'm ready. I can see it. Yeah.
Well, we get, I got to share this with you. We have had the most numbers of Brazilians, Hispanics, coming to church over the last 2 years, 3 years now. And those numbers are just going up.
Can I tell you a story on that?
Yeah.
So I'm in the foyer in the 11:30 service, just for the 11:30 service. And somebody came up to me, and it was, they weren't Brazilian, but they had a Brazilian person with them who was visiting and going to move here, I think. I don't remember what the whole story was, but visiting from Brazil. And they wanted to introduce, and I said, well, you're in the right service, because the 11:30 service has all kinds of Brazilians and immigrants of all kinds. And she said, oh, I know, I've been watching. You can tell who's who.
So it's very easy to tell who we are.
Yeah.
Especially when the service is over.
Because you don't leave.
We don't. We
hang
around.
Family, you are all about relationship. I
we
love
hang
it.
around and we'll just stay until they kick us out.
Oh yeah,
So-
I know that 11:30 service, the Brazilians are going to be there. They're going to be hanging out. Yeah.
Well, but thank you so much for this time, for making room. We are trying to, as you know, I mean, we've shared this many times before. Our goal is to inspire. Our goal is to empower and bring the Brazilian and the Latino community closer to God. And we found that LatinCast is one of the ways that we can get our message across. And we are so thankful for everything that you do for the Brazilian community, for us as a family, for my family, and for the city of Charleston.
Well, thank you. And I'm Glacey's biggest fan. I want to tell you that. Love what you're doing. Love your leadership, and excited about whatever the future is.
And if people want to know, if our followers and they want to know more about Seacoast, about Pastor Greg, how can they, where they can go?
You can go seacoast.org, which is our website, which has all kinds of information. pastorscollective.com will tell you all about Pastors Collective and what we're doing there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet.
And hopefully we'll do this again in the near future.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you for following us. Thank you. I hope you liked this interview. Keep on connecting with us for more content. See you next time.